Hi guys, welcome to the Into the Pits podcast. My name is Ronan. Joining me is my co-host Brett Evans. Today we're going to be previewing the World Championship of ERL, the class of that and the class of Formula 1 as well. So, Brett, how are you?
Yeah, I'm alright, and yeah, all good. Happy New Year to everyone around the world, and of course, obviously being in 2023 already, nothing's changed. Just to let people know, um, and hoping that 2023 is going to be a good year in the terms of racing and all around general affairs.
That's it. So we have a great class for the 2023 season for ERL and of course Formula 1. You've got rookies coming in as well for both championships. You know, you've got Oscar Piastri for Formula 1 and you've got other specials too for the ERL side. So, the first race of the season is going to be in Bahrain, so let's get over to the class now. In Mercedes is myself, you know, both me and Brett Evans are racing in the series as well. So we're going to try to keep it as non-biased as possible throughout the season. So in Mercedes we have myself and we have Richard as my teammate as well. So hopefully we can get a good amount of points this season. You know, I'm looking forward to it. Not played F1 in a while, obviously due to the Christmas holidays, but going to be try practicing soon as well. And Brett, you excited for the Mercedes lineup?
Well, I think all in all, you've got a pretty good lineup. Obviously, you were very strong in your debut season for the series, and Richard all in all has been a very dedicated, committed driver, and he's now actually joined the ranks of the wheel users. So expect to see him sort of get his momentum as he slowly gets used to the wheel. Haven't seen him on F1 as much as of late, but like you say, Christmas period does tend to change the swing of momentum. But yeah, it's been an interesting foray. He was very quick on the pad, so I would expect to see him running up the front along with some other big names coming into the season ahead.
That is it. So in Red Bull, we have a good lineup as well. Just about see it, there it is there. Red Bull, we have. Let me get it there. Red Bull, we have Bo and Dennis for the Red Bull lineup as well. So that's a really strong lineup. So Bo last season was really fast. He was competing with me and Phil. We'll get to Phil soon, but he was competing up there with Phil and me. You know, really fast driver, very consistent. You know, throughout a race, weekend and qualifying as well. So all in all, Red Bull have a really strong lineup. I would say.
Yeah, obviously you've got Bo, who, like you say, is a very quick qualifier. He's always there and thereabouts. When Phil wasn't having a good race throughout last season, Bo was sort of there to pick up the pieces, and his teammate Dennis Bergkamp is really fast and committed as well. He had a bit of a bad tendency to sort of pack the race in when it didn't go his way. So I think obviously with a bit more at stake this season, with it being an actual championship matter, world championship rather than just a league event, I'm sure he'll be more determined to finish races rather than pull in the pits and call it quits when the going gets tough.
Yeah, he will be definitely determined for 2023 indeed. On to Ferrari. Uh, Again, very consistent lineup over there. You've got yourself, Brett, and you've got a really good teammate in Michael. So two really consistent drivers, as I said, Bo was as well. So how you feeling about your new teammate?
Look, Michael and I go back way back. Obviously, this year, well, for me right now, 2023, I've known him for 10 years now. So we met in F1 2013. We did our very first co-op career mode back then. We were in Red Bull. Um, I was the Vettel to his Weber in a case, but he's a really good guy. He's really down to earth. The only American on the grid as well, so it'll be an interesting foray. You know, he's bringing the number 7 back to Ferrari as well. So yeah, I think we'll have an interesting season ahead, and I think we'll both be there or thereabouts.
That's it. A classic number going back to Ferrari, as 7 was Kimi Raikkonen back in 2020 when he left. Yeah, really consistent lineup for Ferrari as well. They're hoping to get a good amount of points going into 2023. And yeah, hopefully you enjoy your new teammate, Brett.
Hmm.
On to McLaren, you've got Jordan and Phil. As I mentioned, Phil, we're talking about Red Bull. Phil is a very, very fast driver on the wheel, one of the fastest in the league. Everyone's hoping to stop him, and everyone is hoping to get that position in front of him to hold him up in the pits probably as well. And you've got Jordan as well, one of your good friends, Brett. Jordan is a really, really fast driver as well, so everyone needs to watch out for the Australian as well. Sorry, New Zealander. See, messed up there.
Yeah, Jordan's got has got a lot of pace, but he has a tendency to be a little opportunistic in his strategy, and they sometimes compromises him a little bit. Phil, as you point out, yeah, obviously he's the defending champion, and he's the benchmark of the event. Everyone wants to beat him. He really pushes himself to the high limits. I mean, he hasn't touched the game in 3 months, and he got back on it in yesterday's Sprint Mode Championship. And even though the Sprint Mode Championship isn't exactly a serious outlook, he was still driving the car to the limits that, you know, he was just on the top of his game. And funnily enough, during the whole foray of the Sprint Mode, I heard words that I'd never ever hear, and it was like, I need to concentrate, I need to catch Brett. So I'm hoping that's a sign of things to come. But I'm heavily tipping Phil to go back to back and be our first official world champion of ERL.
Yeah, looking forward to that as well. You know, Phil is a really, really fast driver, as you just said there. He's very consistent. He's very, very good at undercutting and overcutting strategies, which he is. So that's going to be a big, big part in his strategy as well throughout a race weekend. And yeah, a McLaren got a really, really solid lineup there. On to Alpine then. Alpine have Lewis and Tom. They've been alright, I guess, in the last
Well,
season. So they were, they were up there. But solid midfield team, so they are.
well, they only had met when they joined the league, and honestly, with the way that they talk to each other and give each other wrap ups, you'd think they've known each other for years. But
Yeah.
they're very solid. Lewis has actually just got himself a wheel, so he's going to be probably for the first couple of rounds. I'd say he'll be a little bit at the back as he adjusts himself to the idea of what to do and all that stuff. But I think within time he'll get back to his pace. And the one good thing about a wheel is that sometimes if you've got extreme pace on the pad and then you convert to the wheel, you're going to feel sluggish and slow at the start.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
once you get that pace back, then you just start to find ways to improve it. We had a particular guy named Andrew Lee, and he was almighty on the pad. He was usually within the top 20 of the fastest drivers in the world on pad. And we used to badger him quite a lot about being on the pad, and then he got himself a wheel and he quadrupled his pace. So I'd expect to see the same sort of coming out of Lewis as well as he adapts.
Yes, so they have. Alpine haven't had a really good season last season in the Formula One season. Reliability issues and all that. Hopefully, that's not a sign of things to come for in game as well. Hopefully not.
We'll just see how it goes. We'll preview that part when we reach it.
Definitely. On to the last Red Bull Junior team. Well, the only Red Bull Junior team. We have Robin and Reese, a fellow Scotsman of mine. Reese, not saw him race yet. I believe he just joined not too long ago. But AlphaTauri have got a really, really good lineup, it looks like. Hopefully they can communicate well. Obviously, a guy from New Zealand and a guy from Scotland. Very different language, so I don't know if they will understand each other quite not. I don't know what Reese's, sound like, so it could be a less, more accent than mine, I guess.
Hard to say, honestly, but like you say, obviously with Robin being Dutch, he's pretty good. Robin's actually probably one of the few drivers that could probably challenge Phil through and throughout. We did see snippets of it, but obviously his qualifying didn't sort of serve him that well. I think it was Miami and Spain he raced in
Yeah.
as a fill-in, but he's been around since the inception of TNE, the original league, and I think if he puts his mind to it, he could accomplish good things. And as you say, don't know much about Reese. He's a new driver and haven't really seen him race yet. So hopefully when the time comes, we'll see his pace and we'll be able to determine where he is on the pecking order come the next time we chat about it after the first round.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's a good lineup as well. Hopefully they can communicate. As I said, accent difference. Robin's from the Netherlands, Reese is from Scotland. Very different accents there. So hopefully they both of them can communicate throughout the season. On to Aston Martin now. Aston Martin have a really really good driver actually in Harley and Mitchell. Harley's a bit of a wrecker, shall I say, in my opinion. But you know what? Harley is a really, really good racer. He's really, really fast. He's up there with me and you, Brett. Aston Martin have a really, really good lineup here, and Mitchell as well. Mitchell's a really, really, really fast driver. So, really up there with Phil, I would say.
Well, I would say that I would go to say that Mitch would probably be the only driver at the current moment that would be able to go toe to toe with Phil on a race weekend. Very rarely we've seen that actually happen. Mitch obviously raced in a different division to Phil, so it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. And as you say, Harley's got pace, but he's a little bit hot-headed,
Yeah,
what
definitely,
you would
agreed.
call it. So gets quite agitated and makes mistakes as a result of that. So I would say his aim this season will be to sort of just knuckle down and find a rhythm to get himself into the play because he could be there or thereabouts. I mean, we had a social race at Bahrain maybe about just under a month ago, and it
Yeah,
was a great race between me, him, and Mitch
yeah.
for
What I
the
saw
win.
that. Yeah, that was really good.
And I think if we can see that a bit more often, it could be a very interesting title fight. But I still think it will be a bit of a Mitch versus Phil debate for the majority of it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. On to the British team in Williams Renault. Two Italians, so looking forward to that. Two Italians,
Oh, excuse me.
Pietro and Mazzoni. Uh, Obviously, they would know each other pretty well, as they're both Italians and all that. So hopefully they can get in a party, and hopefully they get a couple of podiums, maybe even a couple of wins.
Yeah, well, Mazzoni is very dedicated, he's very committed, and he's actually quite quick as well. Pietro haven't seen much of. The only issue I've found in it is that their English isn't the greatest, so communication's been a bit of a tough slog there. But as you just pointed out, so for people who probably just sit there and went, Williams Renault, what are you talking about? Obviously to keep the situation, well, the constructor system fair, we've actually got Mercedes loaning out Williams to Alpine
Yeah, saw that.
to allow for stability within the contract negotiations because obviously this championship works differently to any league event in which that drivers are contracted to their seats and the team owners. So obviously you're the team owner of Mercedes, I'm the team owner
Yes.
of Ferrari, sort of thing.
Yeah.
We devise contract negotiations with drivers. So obviously because of that system, Tom and Louis would only be really in charge of themselves. So we gave them Williams to work with as well. And yeah, as you say, I think if they once the two drivers get more acquainted with one another, I think yeah Williams could be quite a force to be reckoned with, which I think a lot of people probably have wanted to see for a little while.
Yeah, definitely. Gonna be really good to see them work together, throughout the season, gaining that bit of chemistry with one another, and yeah, hopefully to see them up with the top guys like Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari. Right, on to the second last Ferrari engine power, shall I say, with Amari. Am I right? Am I saying that? Amaru and
A
Guy.
mirror.
Amaru. There we go. Obviously Guy. You and him go way back, so you know him really well. Hopefully they two can get a bit of a relationship going as well. Obviously Guy. You and him go way back. So how about you tell me a bit about him as well?
Oh, what couldn't I tell you about him? Obviously a lot of stuff I can't say live on thing. Although
Yeah, definitely. Keep
I
it
think a lot of
PG.
people well, a lot of people who watch this probably know the relationship Guy and I have. We're really good mates. We sort of bounce off each other in a really positive sense, and obviously getting him on board in one of the Ferrari engine cars was critical to the situation. So, and Amural, obviously he's very quick as well. He is and well, he's probably the most devoted, dedicated driver on the grid because technically he's up every morning at like 3 in the morning, having
Yeah.
to race, being from Singapore. So obviously he has a lot to work for in that, but he's probably about as quick as Phil on some tracks. But yeah, he just real. I actually think Alfa Romeo could be a real strong force. Guy's attendance ratio hasn't always been the flashiest, but of course he's got quite a lot on his plate, being a sports physician and whatnot. So I think bottom line is they're out there to have some good time, have a good time, and get some points and help the constructors out, and of course the Ferrari, give the Ferrari engine unit a good name. So yeah, I think we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I think going overall will be a really good partnership.
Yeah, helping the constructors indeed. Helping the constructors would be the next good one for the next team as well. Haas have not been really good for the past couple of seasons in Formula One, and it's been okay last season as well, in the social race. But we got a really fast driver coming up in Vedran and Marcin. Vedran's a really fast driver. I battled with him in the Bahrain social race. Really good driver, really fast, very consistent. Shall I say, very good at undercutting and overcutting. He picks when to go into the pits rightly. He doesn't make a wrong decision. He always gets it right. Vedran's, you should know Vedran more than me. Been in the league a lot more, I guess. So, yeah, looking forward to
Well,
see Haas as well.
well, funnily enough, I don't actually know Vedran that well. He joined the league initially before the original league before it sort of caved in, but so I didn't really get to know him all that much. But obviously, from what he's showing, he's very quick. He's very communicative. Well, he knows how to communicate with people, and all that kind of stuff. I think Ronan just got called out, but I'll carry on anyway. But yeah, the parody of it all, and Marston has been very committed as well. He's um, I wouldn't call him exactly one of the fastest drivers on the track, but he's always there, he's always racing, he's always keeping on it. It doesn't matter whether he falls to 2 or 3 laps down, he just keeps going because he knows at the end of the day, anything can happen in a race, and, safety cars crashing out, all those sort of variables come into play. So, and they don't, and as they say, the fastest isn't always guaranteed victory. So, one day I'd like to think that one day he'll be in the box seat to capitalise on someone else's misfortune and bank up a first race win of his career. It's sort of been my recipe for success over the last few years, is sort of just hang back and capitalise on other people's misfortunes. But
Yeah, that's
yeah, I
everyone's.
think
That's everyone's deal as well. Capitalise on everyone's mistakes. Try to get the most points as you can in a race weekend, especially in the sprints. The sprints you need to capitalise a lot on every mistake possible. And the guy in front of you, the guy behind. Every millisecond counts.
and yeah, so I think all in all, I think Haas is a really good lineup, and I think obviously Vedran will keep that car sort of up the pointy end. I think Marston will still bag some pretty good points for the team as well.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to see them. Grow as well. Haas is. Not often Haas get a good lineup, but really good lineup for the 2023 ERL season. So, yeah, that is the World Championship of ERL class of 2023. Now on to the big one, the big teams, shall we say, the F1, the FIA Formula One World Championship 2023. Starting off with the reigning champions, Red Bull Racing, two-time world champion and multiple race winner Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Looking forward to see Max Verstappen next season, dominating, hopefully dominating again, for obviously all the Dutch fans out there. Hopefully Sergio Perez can go up there next season as well. How about you?
Well, obviously, as you put it out, Red Bull had a very dominating season last, with Max Verstappen winning them, becoming the now title holder for the most wins in a season. I think 18 it was the end result. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, but check that
Obviously,
out.
Red Bull copped a bit of whack for the cost cap breach, but I guess they got away with it in a little sense, which I know a lot of people are a little agitated about, but that's probably another story for another day. But Sergio, I'll be honest, I think Sergio needs to sort of I think this is the year Sergio needs to really get his act together because I don't think Red Bull want a number two driver. That's fair enough, but
Yeah,
obviously
definitely.
You've got Liam Lawson in the wings, ready to snap that seat up. And obviously, if he does really well in the Super Formula Series, I think Red Bull are going to probably take a gambit and put him in that seat. And so Sergio's got to need to prove to the team that he's still capable of delivering while being the foreman to helping Verstappen go back to back to back and win three on the trot.
Yeah.
Because obviously Red Bull are very intent on trying to make Verstappen the next Sebastian Vettel. Um, so it'll be interesting to see. But obviously there's some titles that Vettel has done at Red Bull that Verstappen won't be able to accomplish, such as the youngest driver to win two titles, three titles, and four titles. So
Yeah.
that much won't be established, but obviously Verstappen can. I think with the way Red Bull is at the moment, you could probably see Verstappen maybe being a
Yeah.
4 or 5 time winner.
They're in a really good shape now. If Sergio Perez doesn't buck up, it could be a Daniel Ricciardo versus Liam Lawson for that second seat in the coming future. You know, Red Bull had a really, really solid season last year with Max Verstappen as well. Sergio Perez was up there at the start of the season, but started to fall off, after Monaco, after they got that win. And, Max Verstappen wasn't happy about him getting pole position, as you saw in Brazil. Didn't give him, the second place, which in my opinion, which cost Sergio Perez to get second place in the Drivers' Championship. But, no speaking coming out of the Red Bull camp about that one. But, yeah, looking forward to see if Max Verstappen can continue his run through to 2023. So, yeah. On to the second place Constructors Champions as well. And number 3 as well. Solid top teams in Formula 1 now. But the second place in last season was Mercedes AMG Petronas with George Russell and 7-time Formula 1 World Champion Lewis Hamilton. As you know, George Russell got the win in Brazil to become a new time Formula 1 not World Champion, God's sake. A new Formula 1 race winner alongside a veteran 7-time World Champion Lewis Hamilton. So hopefully that relationship can get built next year, I think, in my opinion. Two Brits, German team, but doesn't matter about the team. It matters about the relationship that both drivers have, as you saw last year with Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen. Both of them had a good season. Obviously, it matters about the car as well, and the driver, and the whole team as well. But hopefully that relationship can build next season as well.
Well, I think in the grounds of things, when you look at when you looked at everyone, they said, "Oh, George Russell was going to get absolutely demolished in 2022," but couldn't have been more the opposite in the case. George ran a really good season with a car that really probably shouldn't have been where it was, to be honest. And Lewis obviously demonstrated that a little bit by going into 2023 now with the unbroken stature of being the only driver in Formula One to have won a race in every season they've contested. So even Michael Schumacher hasn't been able to accomplish that feat. But obviously Lewis lost that as of last year. So and of course now they've signed Mick Schumacher on as reserve driver. So I think Lewis needs to probably get his act together as well. So I think he'll fall into don't get me wrong, obviously Mercedes are still very much Lewis Hamiltonified, but I'd say if Lewis has another season like that, with missed opportunities, and obviously if George starts racking up more wins and stuff like that, I would think that Lewis might either consider retirement, or
definitely.
the team might think, well, maybe we should put our money on Mick and see how he does, and put Lewis on a sabbatical maybe. But I think before we go further on it, there was an interesting thing I just read this morning about how a lot of teams are not so much going to be adopting any different kinds of strategies to their cars. So you're not going to see a lot more Red Bull looking cars on the grid. So a lot of team mechanics have sort of come out and said the dynamics of our cars are fine, but we're not going to go and copy Red Bull just because they're the fastest car.
Yeah, I know Mercedes has missed opportunities, as you said, last season, for one race back in Zandvoort, Lewis Hamilton could have won the race. They didn't decide to pit. Had a lot less fresher tyres than Max Verstappen had. It was a 1-2 for Mercedes, but George overtook Lewis in the straight. Then Lewis went back into second. Then Max just absolutely obliterated Lewis Hamilton on the straight as well. The straight line in the Mercedes wasn't really good last season. They really got a hang of it. Round about, I think, Brazil time was when they got the straight line sorted. But, Mercedes, again, not capitalising on the mistakes that they used to do. And hopefully they're looking for a better season than they had, this season. It wasn't really good for the 7-time champions. And, it wasn't really a good season, as you said, for Lewis Hamilton. Every season he's been in, he's won a race, which is really, really good, very consistent for a driver. I'm surprised that Max Verstappen hasn't done that yet. Very strong driver, still very young. Hopefully Mercedes can, capitalise on the mistakes next season, if there's any to capitalise on. So, on to Ferrari. Right, where do we go with this? Where do we go with Ferrari? They didn't have the best of seasons. Started off strong with a win, but just fell off in the end.
Yeah, Ferrari have not had a very good tendency to keep a consistent championship campaign, and it's been going on pretty much since Renault took the championship in 2005, and beyond that point, they've just sort of, obviously they bounced back in 07-08 with Raikkonen winning the world title and Massa virtually just missing it by a sort of circumstance, which still to this day gets, it still gets talked about to this day. That is that Glock, is that Glock gate, as you would call it. So obviously Ferrari they've always had pretty strong drivers. You've obviously had Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, Kimi Raikkonen, and now you've got Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Obviously, Leclerc had a really stellar start of the season, but reliability and driving era really took over. Matteo Binotto obviously piled a lot of pressure on the team. Carlos Sainz got his first win, which was great. And then, obviously, this year is different because now Matteo Binotto is gone and they've got Fred Vasseur from Alfa Romeo, which I actually think is probably the best move they've made in decades.
Yeah.
Fred's obviously been around for a long time. He's very, he's helped bring Alfa Romeo, Sauber, I suppose you would call it back then. He brought Sauber back from pretty much nothing and got them back up to the pointy end of the field. I think he joined when Leclerc joined. So
yeah, he did. Yeah, because he's really, really good friends with Leclerc, I heard. So hopefully that relationship can go further. As really good move from Ferrari. Fred Vasseur, very, very, very good, as you said, bringing not a so good team in Alfa Romeo back up, to the, not where they should be, but close enough, with the resources they have, as being a Ferrari powered team. Obviously not the best engine last year, but hoping to get a better engine next year for the Ferrari side of things. This is a new year. This has been the first year that all the teams have, worked with the new regulations and all that. So next year is going to be very, very competitive again, hopefully. And yeah, that is Ferrari. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about Ferrari, to be honest with you. They didn't have the best season last season. They didn't capitalise on the mistakes. They had injury issues. The strategy, God, I don't know where to go with the strategy now. It's been terrible.
And I think a lot of also the misfortunes was Charles cracking under the pressure. So you could see in France where he was leading the race, he made a mistake and crashed out. There was another track, I think, I can't remember. I'm only talking from memory here, so I never actually watched any of the races apart from Australia and listened to the races around America, Mexico, and Sao Paulo. So I'm only basing this off what I've seen in highlights and whatnot. But yeah, Ferrari need to really get their act together because they've for the last, let's say, since 2017 when Vettel became a prime challenger. Pretty much from there, they've gone strong at the start and then faltered, and then they've sort of come back at the end. Obviously, Charles never won a race again after Australia, I want to think it is.
Yeah, I think it
But
is. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
And then of course Carlos got his one and only win at the British Grand Prix after a bit of a issue with inventing from the team. So just again, it's just another case of Ferrari playing favourites and stuff like that. And I do feel a little fearful, as you put out, that Vasseur and Leclerc are good mates. So I'm hoping that they don't use that as a means of pushing Carlos away to favour Charles, because Red Bull do that every time with their young gun drivers. So whether it's Max Verstappen, Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, once upon a time.
Yeah.
So the whole concept of having number one, number two driver, I understand it's an important pinnacle to establishing who gets what and stuff, but you don't see that kind of stuff in touring car racing. You don't see it so much in Indy cars. So I just don't think, I don't feel like they need to do it anywhere else.
Yeah, definitely. As you said, hopefully they don't favour one person over the other. That's been happening. And last season as well. As you said, Carlos Sainz gets his first win, and no one was there to celebrate with him. There was talks around the paddock. Is it favouring one another? Is it favouring Charles Leclerc over Carlos Sainz? Sure, there's a lot of things happening at Ferrari last season. A lot of things. So hopefully they can get fixed for the 2023 season as well. On to the fourth constructor stand in place. A very close one last season with Alpine and McLaren, but Alpine just got the edge there after a couple of retirements from McLaren. I'm pretty sure it was Alpine that got fourth last season, if I'm not.
I'm not 100% sure, but Alpine is actually probably the team I'm most excited about, because obviously Pierre Gasly is now finally out of the Red Bull family. He's finally been liberated from basically a situation where he knew he was never going to get back in that Red Bull seat. He had his one chance, he blew it, and pretty much the team made it very abundantly clear that he was never going to get put back in the team, because obviously they picked Sergio Perez over him in 2021. Obviously, he got his chance in 2019. It just didn't work out, and he got pretty much pushed aside. And with all due respect to that sense, Albon didn't exactly really do much better in that sense. So obviously Pierre got his first win in 2020 at the Italian Grand Prix.
Yeah, it was 2020 at the Italian Grand Prix. I just want to clear up, I'm sorry for saying the Mercedes were second, Ferrari were second with 554 points to Mercedes 515 points, so I just want to clear that up,
Yeah,
sorry.
I had wondered that myself, but
Yeah.
and obviously Esteban Ocon, fresh off a win from well, 2 years ago, I have to say now, because it's 2023 here, but he got his first win in 2021 at the Hungaroring, and then so two Frenchmen and a French team.
Yeah.
You'd expect some good results out of that.
Yeah, definitely. The chemistry would bounce off each other, but I've heard over the past couple of years that Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly are not the best of friends, but I've saw on social media, they look happy with each other, they look happy, as you said, a French team, two French drivers, they should bounce off each other.
It could be just they're probably just using the dynamic of just playing face just to keep everyone happy. But I have heard that myself. But in saying that, I've also heard that Esteban doesn't get along with a lot of drivers on the grid. Obviously, with the whole Fernando Alonso departure thing, a lot of news sort of started swirling around, and Esteban and Fernando started firing pot shots at one another about the chemistry at the team. So. I guess Esteban is very driven in his own ways, and it just doesn't really gel with other drivers. So obviously he and Max won't be the best of mates, but
yeah, definitely. After that collision in 2018 at Brazilian Grand Prix, that cost Max Verstappen the win. So yeah, as you said, Esteban Ocon not getting along with a lot of the drivers, but should get along with his teammate. As I said, French team, two French drivers. So, yeah, as you said, after Fernando Alonso departing, there was talks about one driver that we're going to go into next, and Pierre Gasly. That one driver is going to be Oscar Piastri. The drama that happened over the summer break was absolutely mental.
Well, the funny story about that, and it's quite ironic, is that this sort of derived from an incident that was happening in IndyCars at the same time. So, for those who don't watch IndyCars, Alex Palou is a Chip Ganassi driver, and he announced that actually Chip Ganassi announced that they had retained him for the 2023 season, but then Alex came out with a statement saying this press release is false. I'm actually not driving for the team next year, and it started this debacle, which actually ended up going in the way of Chip Ganassi, so they actually kept Alex Palou. Then of course this whole thing, Sebastian Vettel announces his retirement at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and then next minute, like probably not even 24 hours later, Aston Martin confirms that Fernando Alonso's driving for the team. And then, so a lot of people went around thinking, oh yeah, this is, Oscar Piastri's going to drive for the team. Alpine believed that Oscar Piastri was driving for the team. They put out a press statement to say that Oscar Piastri has signed a contract for the team, and then Oscar comes out and says, no, that's not true.
Yeah, I know. It was like he didn't want to drive for them.
Obviously, there was something there. There's some sort of dynamic there that Oscar just didn't. I think it comes down to a lot of things. You come in as you're the defending F2 champion. You can't go anywhere else because obviously by the rules of the F2 championship, once you win it, you can't go back, which I think is a stupid rule. I think that needs to be changed. And then, he could have gone to IndyCar or he could have gone to DTM or something like that, but he chose to stay firm and be Alpine's reserve driver for that year. And then I think if I remember correctly, him and Otmar were having a conversation, and I think they were convinced that they were going to keep Fernando on for another year.
Yeah, I heard about that.
With the idea that he would be in the car in 2024, and I'm pretty sure if I was told that, I would have gone looking elsewhere as well, because I would have, there's no guarantee, because you know what Fernando Alonso's like. He's a driver that when he makes a decision on something, he sticks to it. So, and you're never going to get rid of him, and unless no team in Formula One is going to be willing to sign a contract for him. So, it's pretty much the same as Kimi Räikkönen, although I don't know what prompted Kimi to change his mind. But whatever the case is, Oscar didn't want to waste any time, so he went to McLaren. McLaren then sort of put themselves in a bit of a bind, because obviously they couldn't necessarily give him a seat unless they go by the contract clause that Daniel Ricciardo had, which was at any given time, Daniel can tear up his contract if he gets given another option, or if they mutually agree to part ways based on performance clause, which, I think they fit the bill for Daniel there quite fantastically. Obviously, Daniel just didn't have a connection with that McLaren, and ultimately Daniel announced he would step away from the team to allow Oscar to have that seat, and so you got Oscar Piastri at McLaren alongside Lando Norris. So you've got one of the youngest combinations. I actually think that AlphaTauri might actually have the youngest all around.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
But I think it's going to be interesting to see if Oscar can do what Daniel couldn't as such. And Lando's obviously been there long enough now to understand the dynamics of a car and the dynamics of the team. So I actually am tipping that we might see a Lando Norris race victory this season.
Yeah, hopefully we can see a Lando Norris race victory this season as well. Lando Norris getting a good amount of podiums last year. His favourite position is obviously third, as you can tell, but you can't really get a race win with that Red Bull last season. That Red Bull was very, very fast. Very fast in every compound, actually. But, some circuits suiting some cars, some circuits, suiting McLaren, some circuits suiting Alpine, Mercedes, Ferrari. It was going into a race weekend last season, it was blinded. You didn't know who was going to be fastest. High downforce tracks, it was Mercedes and Alpine. On low downforce tracks, it was Red Bull and McLaren. It was was like a jigsaw puzzle. You had to try and figure out who was going to be the fastest, over a course of a race weekend. But this season, I think we'll have a clear mind going in to see who will be fastest at each track. Bahrain's a weird track. It's a low downforce, high downforce kind of. It's like medium downforce. So we'll soon see. As you said, a very, very young lineup for McLaren and Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And another young lineup as well in, what's his name? Nick De Vries and Yuki Tsunoda. A really, really good lineup going into AlphaTauri as well with both the two drivers. This is Nick De Vries' first season as a Red Bull Junior driver. Hopefully he can make his way up to the Red Bull Senior driver very, very soon.
Well, obviously, I actually do have to clear something up too. You just made a point there I need to clear up. While the F1 season will be starting at Bahrain, the ERL season will actually be starting off at Melbourne. So just to clear that one. But yeah, to your point, obviously, Nick De Vries came in as a super sub for Alex Albon, who had appendicitis and almost actually died subsequently after the operation for that. So he filled in and actually scored points on his first outing, which really put poor Nicholas Latifi in a bad spot. Not so much for that seat, but obviously Williams were very intent on getting a particular driver, and who we'll talk about when we get to them. But Yuki Tsunoda, I'm gonna be honest with the people here, and sorry if there are any Yuki Tsunoda fans listening, but I just don't think he's really got what it takes to be in Formula One. Obviously, he was put into the competition as a contract clause for Honda to have a Japanese representative on the grid, but he probably spends more time running his mouth than he is actually racing the car.
Yeah, he's very, very, very vocal in the car, as you've heard in the radio this season.
Well, and he's got no filter, so
yeah.
That can be quite bad for ratings, especially if the censorship system doesn't catch on to it quick enough one day. But obviously, he's been in the car for 2 years now, and actually, subsequently, AlphaTauri had one of their worst seasons in their Formula One history. So, obviously, even when they debuted back in 2007, they didn't quite have as bad a season. But of course, they had Sebastian Vettel at the time, and Vettel was really showing some good faith, and Sebastian Bourdais was no pushover either. I think AlphaTauri are going to have it. Obviously, Formula One's always had this big ground rule that you shouldn't really have a B team sort of thing, but Red Bull have always sort of made no stranger to the idea that AlphaTauri is the B team, and it was interesting to me that they sort of left AlphaTauri to their own devices for 2022, and it shows by being ninth in the constructors behind Aston Martin, Alfa Romeo, and last only to Williams. So it's very interesting to see how that sort of plays out, but obviously with Nick De Vries on the team, that could change.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting. As you said, maybe if Yuki Tsunoda gets let go, maybe, I don't know, but if Daniel Ricciardo gets put in that seat, I know that sounds crazy, but I don't think that will happen. But yeah, as you said, after getting, not the best season, but as you said, back in 2007, they had Sebastian Vettel, got his first win as well. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken. 08 was that 2000 second year, right? Okay. Yes. They didn't really have the best season last year. They were in the middle, but then they went down.
I think reliability really played them out.
Yeah. Reliability was a big cause for everyone, as I said, Alpine was really bad with it as well. They were one of the worst throughout the grid, with engine issues in Singapore, and engine issues in, I can't remember other tracks, but I know they had a lot of engine issues anyway. It was mostly Fernando Alonso, but, talking about Fernando Alonso, moving to a not recognisable team, in Aston Martin, when Lewis Hamilton moved from McLaren to Mercedes, everyone thought it was the most dumb move you could possibly make in Formula One history. You know, everyone was doubting him. They were saying that you won't get any titles, any wins, and he proved them all wrong. So can this be a reincarnation for Fernando Alonso, maybe getting another title with Aston Martin?
I think the difference in what Alonso has done versus what Hamilton has done is that Hamilton moved into a team just before new regulations came in, and then Mercedes got the regulations correct, where every other team sort of got it horrendously wrong. I don't think Aston Martin are going to turn their fortunes around very quickly. Obviously, they did improve their package across the year, which helped Sebastian Vettel start getting more points across the board. Lance Stroll was obviously getting more points as well. Unfortunately, because of the backdating of the championship, Alfa Romeo beat them in the championship, even though they were tied on points. I think it was because out of all the drivers, I think Bottas had the best finishing position in one of the races
Yeah, it was
over the other ones.
P6. So it was P6 for Valtteri Bottas, so it was.
Yeah, so, and obviously Vettel now out of the sport, which is obviously a tragic shame for a lot of drivers, me included. So got to try and find a new favourite driver to support. That's going to be interesting to say the least. But I know this is going to sound a little bit strange, but I actually would like to see Lance Stroll maybe get his first win in the sport. He's got a pole position, which is not easy to do in this generation of Formula One. Although back then the Racing Point was probably about as quick as the Mercedes and the Red Bulls and all that.
Yeah.
Didn't have quite the driver lineup to sort of match the performance of it. Even though Sergio did get a win there in 2020, but that was the Bahrain outer circuit, which they'll never use again. But they're obviously Fernando's looking at it from a development term, but I don't know, because he said that about McLaren Honda, and obviously that turned into a fiasco. But
Yeah, you say that.
I guess the only difference in it is that it's not a new engine deal. It's not a new regulation field. Obviously, the cars are probably going to adopt the same body structures, maybe have a few tweaks here and there that they might think. Because obviously, when you look at the car specifications for the year for 2022, Mercedes' zero side pod idea obviously didn't produce any magnificent upgrade or uphauls to Mercedes itself. Obviously, Red Bull probably was the team. Well, I'd say Red Bull and Ferrari were probably the only two teams that really got it remotely right. Ferrari just compromised themselves with their bad strategies and poor reliability. But in saying that too, Red Bull didn't actually come out of the season unscathed as well, because obviously they had some pretty bad reliability issues at the start of the season. And, you know, for Max to come back the way he did,
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable, you know, having engine issues for the first couple of races of the season, and, you know, both Red Bulls retiring in the first race of the season, you know, Sergio Perez in the last lap, Max Verstappen, you know, I think it was 3 or maybe 4 laps to go before the end of the race, gifting, you know, as I said, Charles Leclerc the win, and Lewis Hamilton, you know, a surprising podium, which has been his equal highest ever podium this season, you know. As you said, it wasn't the best journey for Fernando Alonso at McLaren Honda. You know, as reliability, just the same with this season as well. Reliability was very, very, very bad for McLaren Honda, and hopefully Fernando is very, very lucky and gets maybe a couple of wins, maybe not a championship, maybe a couple of wins under his belt, maybe in the coming years. You know, hopefully he doesn't retire soon, because he's one of the top drivers in the grid right now, alongside, you know, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, you know, sadly not Sebastian Vettel anymore. So we'll see, hopefully we can see Fernando Alonso go up there next season with Lance Stroll as well.
well, it's like I said, I don't think he's going to ever retire. The only way he's ever going to be out of Formula One is when teams pretty much won't sign him on and he doesn't actually have a drive. So we'll see him for years to come. But obviously we can move now to Alfa Romeo, I believe.
Alfa Romeo with Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guan Yu. It was a good season for Alfa Romeo last year. You know, a strong start in, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain clinching a really, really good points for both drivers in Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou. Or Zhou Guan Yu, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously for Zhou Guanyu, it was his first year in Formula One, and he turned a few heads. He actually surprised a few people. Of course, unfortunately, he had that horrific accident at Silverstone, being turned up on his roof by George Russell, and of course George, being the man he is, George is the only driver I'd know that would rush to a driver's aid like that. I'm not going to start that meme trend again, but obviously, um, but yeah, no, he did extremely well, and Valtteri in his first, is it? No, yeah, first year
Yeah, yeah,
out of
first year.
Mercedes really showed that his tenacity as a driver wasn't affected so much by the switch of car. He still is driven to succeed as he was in Mercedes. And I think finally being in a position where he's the lead driver, I think that probably motivated him to be better as well. And obviously, they pretty much battled Aston Martin and AlphaTauri for the majority of the 22 season and came out on top. Well, I would say on top, but technically they tied with Aston Martin. They only just won on a countback. But yeah, I think we'll start to see Bottas more consistently in the top five, I think, in 2023. Although, in saying that, with Fred Vassell's departure, that could possibly change the dynamics of Sauber. And then on top of that, you've got the Duda Seidel now joining from McLaren. Of course, that's in relation to the Audi project of 2026. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, whether they drop off the pace or they can pick up their pace or they just sort of stay where they are. But yeah, I think Zhou will get a few more points here and there.
Yeah, I think it was good seeing Valtteri going down from a very top team in Mercedes to go to a back market team in Alfa Romeo. I think it was a fantastic season for Valtteri Bottas with the car he had. He put consistent points in race weekends. Sometimes he would retire, but putting points consistently out there was very, very good for Valtteri Bottas as well. Even Zhou Guan Yu putting, consistent points out there as well in some race weekends, and as you said, having that really bad accident in Silverstone at the British Grand Prix. So yeah, on to on to Haas. This is a weird one, because Kevin Magnussen coming in for the Russian driver Nikita Mazepin. We won't get into all that, but yeah, Kevin Magnussen getting his first ever pole at the Brazilian Grand Prix.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't translate to anything in the end of schemes. But obviously, any first is always one to remember, and especially in a circumstance like he did. Obviously, he's partnering up with an old mate of his. I use that term loosely. Nico Hulkenberg. Obviously, they had an altercation in the 2017 Hungarian Grand Prix, and they shared a moment together. And in fact, apparently, according to a source I'd read online, when the announcement was made that Hulkenberg would be there, apparently Nico approached Kevin and gave him the same exact speech, and they actually had a laugh about it. So obviously their tensions have frayed, and so now they can get to the idea of trying to get Haas back into it. Now, a lot of people probably were quite upset by the decision to axe Mick Schumacher in place of it. I'm more in the frame of mind that I think it was actually probably a good decision in some retrospects, because obviously when you're a fledgling Formula One team like Haas is, and a lot of your money is actually coming out of your own pocket rather than your corporate, because obviously when Nikita Mazepin and his father came into Haas in 2021, they brought in sponsorship in Uralkali. Obviously when the Russian Federation was abolished from most sports due to the invasion of Ukraine, Haas took the initiative and got rid of the sponsorship, got rid of Nikita, got rid of Sergey, and all that. And then obviously Haas spent 2021, 22 with a pretty much a sponsorless car. And so Mick causing all those big crashes, costing them millions of dollars in repairs. In that sort of predicament, I would probably have been looking for a more experienced driver as well, because it's unfair on Mick too, because he's still learning, he's still making up the ways, and a lot of people are saying, Michael would have a fit if he'd seen this, but you have to understand as well, and it's one of the biggest pinnacle points of talking about it. Just because your name is Schumacher doesn't mean that you're destined to be as great as your father or your brother,
Exactly.
or
Yeah. You know,
it's
in my
it's
opinion,
just a
I
name
thought
synonymous to
Mick
sport.
Schumacher, after his debut season, I thought he was going to be very, very strong. Getting to know the team, getting to know his teammate. We won't get his teammate, but his teammate wasn't, the best, as they would call him, Nikita Mazepin. You know, I thought, in my opinion, he was going to be strong after his debut season, but I think it was pressure getting to him, in my opinion.
And it would be, and because because he is a namesake, he is a Schumacher, he is the son of a seven-time Formula One world champion, and probably still rated as one of the greatest drivers of all time within that generation. So of course there would be pressure behind it, and it's up to you as an individual to sort of decide how you approach that sort of pressure. Do you cave and sort of show it by your bad performances, or do you rise above it and just get on with the job? And I think for Mick, unfortunately, I think he let the pressure get to him a little bit, because the funny thing, I wouldn't call it funny, but the strange part about the whole thing is that, hang on a minute. Sorry, hay fever. The funny thing about it was that even though Mazepin caused a lot of spins and all that, it was actually Mick that was still causing the most problems because of the crashing. Like even through 2021, he was crashing the car.
Yeah.
So,
Has to have the biggest budget in the world. A small team. Small teams wouldn't have the biggest budget in the world. As you can see, after ditching Mick Schumacher, crashing, having that really big crash in Saudi Arabia. Thankfully he's all right, because that was a concrete wall he smashed into.
and pretty much the same at Monaco as well. And you also have to take into account too that Haas were also still recovering from the huge fireball that Romain Grosjean had in 2020. So, the team is in a huge financial situation, and it was just an unfortunate situation that they needed to be able to bring in a driver who's a lot more experienced. Personally, I wouldn't have probably put Nico Hulkenberg as my first choice. But obviously, maybe they did approach Daniel Ricciardo, and he said no, because obviously Daniel is a very driven driver that obviously wants to be in the big boys.
Yeah,
So,
he wants to be up there.
he's willing to be a third driver at Red Bull to avoid being in a backmarker team, which to me is selfish in a way, because there's people like Mick, obviously, who are now without a drive that would pretty much rip the hair off their back to drive for a team, regardless of where they are on the grid, because it's just an experience sort of thing. And then you've got Daniel, who's pretty much saying, "Oh, I mean, I either want to be a Red Bull, Ferrari, or Mercedes, or I'm not. I'm not going to drive for anyone. I'll even sit out a year just to do that." So I don't think, you talked about the battle between Daniel Ricciardo and Liam Lawson for Red Bull seat. I don't think Ricciardo is even a factor. I personally think his Formula One career is probably over unless he can get past his little agenda and deal with being in another midfield car or something like that. But Nico, obviously, he played the super sub over the last few years, so
Yeah, reserve driver for Aston Martin last year, and filled in for two sick people during the 2020 season for the COVID. Filled in for, I believe it was Lance Stroll at the British Grand Prix. Obviously, didn't get to start because of an engine issue, and filled in. No, Lance Stroll was.
no, I'm
Um,
pretty sure he actually filled in for both Racing Point drivers, because I think
yeah,
Sergio got COVID and then Lance got COVID as well. So he filled in for both Racing Point drivers. and I think he did a Williams stint as well.
Did he?
Might be wrong on that one, but in any case, yeah, I think Haas will be a bit more up there. They obviously have gone up the pecking order in the championship, having scored no points in 2021 to a good amount to beat Williams and AlphaTauri to be seventh, I think, in the constructors behind Aston Martin and Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So yeah, and then obviously we go into the last car.
The last car, indeed, with Williams, with Alex Albon, and the first American in a long while, I would say, Logan Sargent. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to see this boy driving. I think he's going to be up there with Alex, maybe even better. I don't know about that, but I think he's going to be level with Alex. Two tall guys, why not, with the Williams team?
For me, Logan Sargent was probably not my first choice. Obviously, Williams is now pretty much an American conglomerate team, like Haas in a way. So they wanted to have an American driver in it. To me, I'm not sure if Logan Sargent was the right choice, considering a lot of the time I'd either watched F2 race highlights, he was always in the fence. So I would be inclined to think, I would have thought they maybe took a gamble with Mick Schumacher for the one season, let Logan sort of build himself up a bit more in F2, and then maybe take the gamble for 24. But obviously they are very convinced that he's got what it takes. He did finish fourth in the F2 standings behind Liam Lawson, Teo Pourchaire, and obviously the champion Felipe Drugovich, who pretty much is in the same boat as Oscar Piastri was without a seat, so unfortunate. Although, in saying that, I would have thought that maybe Aston Martin and Mercedes would have pushed to get Felipe Drugovich in that Williams car first. But same sort of situation with Alex Albon, I would have thought, because Gasly going to Alpine would have opened the door for him. I would have thought he would have gone back, and then we probably could have seen a lineup of Nick de Vries and Felipe Drugovich at Williams, which would have been quite an interesting lineup. But I guess, like I say, Williams is a conglomerate of American investors, so I guess the idea of having an American driver was prominent for them. And to your point about the distance of time, the last American driver was Alexander Rossi in 2016.
So yeah, 2016, not too far away, but good to see an American driver back on the grid. I just, it was a very last decision for Jos Capito. The last race, they said if Logan can get enough super license points in his last F2 race, we will sign him. So it was a last dash recruit for the Americans. So very lucky to get that seat indeed.
Well, exactly, and that was the thing. It's like a lot of people sort of ask the question, me in particular, sort of ask the question: do you have a backup plan should this completely come undone? Because all it had to take was a DNF, and you pretty much would have guaranteed that he wasn't going to be in Formula One for another year. So maybe they did have Mick as a potential candidate as a fill-in just until the thing, or maybe even Felipe Drugovich. It's really hard to say, but. Yeah, they took a gamble, and luckily it paid off for them. But yeah, I think pretty much the way it goes. I don't know. I think the status quo for the season is going to be pretty much the same. I think we're going to see Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes fighting up the front, and then the battle with the mid pack. Maybe Aston Martin might be more of a forefront battler for fourth in the constructors against McLaren and Alpine, because obviously Alpine and McLaren both have new drivers. One's obviously fresh face in Oscar Piastri. Pierre's obviously got years of talent now, but still new team, new environment, new car, different engine. So obviously Aston Martin could maybe have a benefactor from it. Alfa Romeo could have a benefactor to it.
Yeah, hopefully Haas can get up there as well.
Well, if you think about it, and it makes sense, with Nico Hulkenberg now in the team, Haas has now got the most experienced drivers on the grid.
Yeah, that's good for Haas as well. Not being the best team, having a good having like a very, very good, not old drivers, but very, very experienced. As you said, the Haas just to have, the experienced drivers in Roman Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen as well. But sadly, Roman Grosjean isn't in Formula One anymore. But in my opinion, I hope we don't see a backmarker team. I hope we see a big, big midfield and maybe 4 teams at the front. Instead of having, it was Haas back in 21, a backmarker team. So was Williams, but then Williams was all right up there in 2020, but just a bit ahead of Haas. Then it was all over the place. So hopefully we can see a big midfield pack and not just the front, the front of the field, the middle, and then the back markers. Hopefully we can see a big midfield pack as well. And I think that's all we've got today, Brett. I think we're going to wrap up now. I thank you everyone for joining as well. This is us been previewing the 2023 F1 standings, the F1 teams and drivers, and so is the World Championship of ERL. Next time we will be reflecting on the round 1 of the... Or should we do a preview? We'll see. But this is us done. Hopefully we can get a preview video out there as well. If we don't, we'll be reflecting on the season opener at Melbourne, sorry. And yeah, my name's Ronan Lang. He's been Brett Evans, and thank you very much.